Let's begin with this story about what now we see. I wish you had the voices of those members of parliament who were speaking in parliament about Joho versus Ruto. And so we saw that team led by Junet Mohammed coming out to speak so hard against the allegations that have been made by Governor of Nandi, Stephen Sang. And I want to ask you the same question I asked the panelists yesterday. If at all there is evidence linking the governor of Mombasa to the narcotics trade, why is it finding its way, or rather, why is this talk finding its way into the public instead of reporting to the rightful authorities?
Thank you, Sam. You've decided to start with me.
Yes.
You know, this is a kind of conversation and the kind of politics that we thought we would put behind us. Politics of character assassination, politics of personalization of issues. And I do agree with you. If there was any leader in the public domain who is involved in illegal activities, be it narcotics, be it corruption, be it land grabbing, be it rape, murder and displacement of persons, and there is evidence to that effect. The right place where that evidence should be placed is with the DCI, and so that the DPP can take action. Mm-hmm. We had about 2 or 3 weeks ago when the corrupt and the fighters of corruption gathered at Bomas of Kenya. Mm-hmm. And there was a lot of blame game, blaming the judiciary for not making sure that those people who break the law are taken, action is taken against them. And the judiciary rightly stated that there's no way they are going to take action on people if evidence is not brought, if prosecutions are not entered, and if investigations are not conducted. Mm-hmm. And so the kind of conversation that is going on now in the political domain is not something that we should be preoccupied with. If there is evidence, and if Sang has evidence, if Ichungu has evidence, then they know where to take that. But this idea of putting us in a state of perpetual personalization and character assassination, I don't think it's the right kind of politics. And it must apply to both sides. Right. There is the side that has been pointing fingers and saying that Mr. So-and-so is a thief. Mm-hmm. There is a side that has been saying Mr. So-and-so is a drug dealer. Let those, because all those are criminal acts that are outlawed in our constitution and various statutes and in the penal code. Mm-hmm. Let us not convert what could appear to be criminal activities into political points or into something that people want to use to gain political points. I would have advised that this kind of conversation should be put to rest, and we as elected leaders, we probably need to focus much more on issues that could help our people. Governor Sang needs to focus on the critical issues that my colleague, the Senator for Nandi, keeps raising about issues of underperformance of devolution in Nandi County. That is what he needs to be more passionate about, rather than extending his reach 500 kilometers away to Mombasa to have a slanging match with Governor Joho, which will not add any value or put milk on the tables of the people of Nandi. Okay. I remember his campaign slogan. It was something about cows. In fact, he said ng'ombe kwanza. Now it has been converted that it does not care about cows anymore. Sasa imekuwa Joho kwanza. Let these leaders focus on the mandate for which they were elected. And
Senator Halwale, you've been in Parliament you were in Parliament for quite some time. Is it since 2002 or 2007? 2002? Great. So this tag has been there for quite some time. Why has it not been possible to really follow through with this investigation? And if indeed the governor of Mombasa is guilty, then he'll be taken through the justice system.
Waswahili husema kuishi kwingi ndio kuona mengi. And Jesus said just before he was hanged that forgive them, for they know not what they are talking about. When I look at all these members of parliament, with due respect, including Senator Kajwang, they actually don't know what they are talking about. In 2010, when I was a member of parliament, at his continental office, Governor Songo was raided by the police. And he stood on a personal statement and demanded from the Minister for Internal Security, who was then Professor George Saitoti, that he be given an explanation why he was being harassed within the precincts of Parliament. And Professor George Saitoti came to the House and tabled a list of 4 members of Parliament plus a businessman, who he said the police were doing everything possible to ensure that they unlock their drug trafficking networks. He tabled the list. And on that list, Joho's name was there. Songo's name was there. Kabogo's name was there. Who was the 4th one? And then and a businessman called Ali Punjambi. This is the truth. No sooner he had said that, Kaboko stood up in his place and demanded that Professor George Saitoti confirms whether the list he was having had been given to him by the then ambassador of the US, Rennenbacher. And then before Saitoti could respond, Kaboko tabled another list, which he was having now 6 members of Parliament. On Kaboko's list, he had added the name of Simon Mbugua, MP East African Legislative Assembly today, and Eugene Wamalwa. So they became 6.
Including himself?
Yes, on the list.
Did Kabogo include his?
Yes, he did. When the debate started getting hot, the Prime Minister was in the House. So the Prime Minister, Raila Odinga, then stood up and confirmed to the House that the US ambassador had actually submitted a list of members of Parliament who were being investigated for drug trafficking. And he said, let the matter rest, because he had formed a task force to settle the matter. Before the debate could end, Joho then stood up and asked the Speaker that his name be expunged from the list. Speaker Marende, I remember very well, then told Joho he was not going to expunge his name or any other name until he authenticated the list that had been tabled in the House, both by Kabogo, Saitoti, and the claim by the then Prime Minister. That is where the matter went. So what would help Senator Kajwang today and the members of Parliament who are there? It would help the country if you would then go and call for the task force report that the Prime Minister put together, so that we know what was the conclusion.
That task force never gave a report?
It never came back to the House. So you do well. Even now, you can ask for that report of the task force to come back. 2, you do well, instead of asking these things, making these statements in Parliament, in the newspapers, press conferences, go to the floor of the House, ask the Minister for Internal Security to update the House on the status of the investigations on the involvement by business people and members of Parliament in drug trafficking. The conversation, Kajwang, cannot end just because you want the governor of Nandi to concentrate on cows. Yes, it is important. Why it cannot end is because drug trafficking is not a joke. It is finishing a generation.
Senator Harwale, I'm looking at a report here that was published by The Nation. I can't get the particular date, but it was in 2010.
Yes,
it says that 6 members of Parliament and a Mombasa tycoon on Wednesday named in the House in connection with the drugs trade. And the Internal Security Minister then, George Saitoti, informed the House that MPs Ali Hassan Joho of Kisauni, William Kabogo of Juja, Harun Mo of Kilome, and Gideon Mbuvi alias Mike Sonko of Makadara, and Mombasa tycoon Ali Punjani are being investigated for alleged drug trafficking. That's what the Nation reported. But I'm just wondering, since then, we have not seen any movement. We are now back in the public. Why can't we resolve this matter once and for all and carry on?
I like what you're asking, and I'd like to say that producing a list does not convict anybody. And like you rightfully said, there's been a lot of time since that list was allegedly produced in 2010. And like Senator is saying, what Mheshimiwa Sang should actually do, or Governor Sang should do, if he really thinks that he has evidence, is not get up and address the press on how Joe is supposed to be trafficking drugs. He knows that our investigative arm has just been revamped, and Kenyans are in agreement that that arm is efficient and up to the task. So if he has evidence that indeed Governor Joho is part of drug trafficking, let him take the evidence there so that the investigations can begin. But getting up to make such huge allegations on his own, addressing the press, is only bringing more instability and tension to the country, which is not what we need during this time of handshake.
Right. At that time, just before you respond, I see that the then Gishugu Member of Parliament, Martha Karua, said it was important for the country to know whether the investigations would be done purely by the police or whether the task force would be under the Prime Minister's office. And if it will be under your ministry, then there are doubts, she said that time. So, if at all there was any credibility of that report or the investigation that were going on, why can't we resolve it even now?
Yeah, and Sam, I think probably the more important question we'd be asking is it fair or right, especially given the weight and the consequences of the import and of drug trafficking and drug consumption. We would ask ourselves, is it right to politicize such an issue? I say politicize because, you see, once you see the angle of taking a team of MPs allied to the side saying keep off Joho, then another, you can see the on the front page of the Nation here, MPs are telling Ruto, himself did not even speak in the first place, and so you see it's a group of MPs, not one. So that tells you it's a collective decision of a certain wing, and then you can start smelling politics in the whole of it. Then you would be asking yourself, really, on a matter as important as drug trafficking and the consequences of drugs, should we politicize it? My answer is absolutely not. I think we should let this have the merit it ought to have. And remember what happened to the Akasha case. The U.S. government was investigating. They came here. They filed matters in court, and it was pursued. They were eventually extradited, and at least one way or the other, you would hope that at the end of that process, a dent has been made on drug traffickers in this country who have caused a lot of harm to our nation and to our young people. And I remember, Sam, there was a time your TV was airing, I think it was a series in a rehab center in Mombasa, and you can't hold yourself back but take a lot of pity on those young people who have turned into cabbages. I mean, the people who had great careers, and so once you see then this becoming a political ping pong, and somebody's trying to what, and I think we can look for other political battlefronts, to use. But on issues like drug trafficking, the welfare of our young people, I think we need to rethink.
But you guys are the politicians. Why is this becoming a matter for contestation in the public?
Well, some my senior Senator Kalwale has made interesting statements. The fact that we are not in Parliament then does not bar us from going into YouTube or going into the Hansard to follow the conversation that was there at that time. And what he has narrated is something that is in the public domain that I also understand. In fact, the people he has mentioned, including Eugene Wamalwa, is now serving as a cabinet secretary, as Minister for Devolution and Assaults. I've just been looking at Chapter 6 of our Constitution that prescribes the conduct of state and public officers, the threshold that we should rise to if we want to serve the public, the establishment of the EACC, and the statement in the Constitution that EACC shall ensure that the provisions of Chapter 6 of the Constitution are enforced, and Parliament shall also enact legislation for enforcement of that section. You have a situation where all the people that Senator Khalwale has mentioned have served in public service at one point or the other. Some of them have been the heads of the Ethics Commission,
Right.
Harun Mwau. Others have been governor. Kabogo has completed his term as governor. Others are serving in the cabinet. Eugene Wamalwa is serving the cabinet. Joho is serving as governor.
And so
Sonko is serving as governor. What happened to our enforcement of Chapter 6? And it also brings to the fore the question, this issue of presentation of lists to Parliament. Remember 4 years ago we celebrated and clapped and gave the President a standing ovation when he brought us a list of shame of tens or hundreds of state and public officers who were reported to have been engaged in corruption. How many convictions have we entered as a result of that list of shame? Sometimes careers can be damaged and killed irretrievably by this idea of presentation of lists. I am not holding brief for Joe. I am not holding brief for Ruto because he has also been accused of theft and evidence has been presented over things like the machete land in Uasin Gishu. If there is a conviction and if at the highest level of the late George Saitoti there was a conviction and there was a view that certain persons were involved in narcotics trade, the challenge then should go to the DCI. Of late, we have seen them focusing on economic crimes. Of late, we have seen them running after governors and all sorts of perceived thieves. But the narcotics trade is much more dangerous to our people. If you go to Lamu and you find the way young people have become zombies, if you go to Mombasa, if you come to Nairobi, and the Nairobi is not just the slums, it is the upmarket areas, Karen, Lavington, Kileleshwa, young people who have gone to good schools are turning to drugs. We must deal with this issue not from a political perspective. We must deal with it because it is an issue that threatens the existence of this nation. And that is why I am saying that we are out of order if you're going to use this as a political slanging match.
Right, and let's listen to what they had to say yesterday if you have those voices of those leaders.
Politics, we know that there are many people who are sent as attack dogs to give messages and attack other people. But the cardinal rule in that game is that you conceal your master.
I urge the Deputy President not to be drawn into answering Joho.
So they are clutching now on Joho, clutching on anything. Na maji imezidi unga, sasa imekuwa uji. Na sio sisi tuko jikoni.
Not everybody in this country supports William Ruto. And it cannot be that anybody who does not support William Ruto is thrown at insults of the like we have seen thrown at our party leader, Deputy Party Leader, Governor Joho.
We will call Joho for who he is.
Hakuna haja kila siku tuwe na ugomvi wa siasa. Uchaguzi unakuja, unaisha. Uchaguzi ukiisha, twarudiana pamoja. Twajenga taifa letu. Tunagojea uchaguzi mwingine ufiki. Lakini sisi tumefanya siasa kuwa chakula morning mpaka evening.
So those are politicians speaking, but clearly we have a problem. I like what he said, but as we carry on, so then what was the solution to deal with this, with this troubling situation?
You know, Sam, this problem is an old problem which has been given a fresh court. I told you at the beginning that when Professor Saitoti addressed us, he said members of parliament and some business people. So he gave a list of 4 members of parliament and 1 businessman. Now, why it has been given a fresh court is because the Akasha brothers have since made confessions in the US, and I think they've been convicted. I don't know whether they've been sentenced.
They'll be sentenced, I think, in March?
Yes, they've been convicted. And upon that conviction, the vibes on social media, which could be partly informing this debate, have been to the effect that there is an impending disclosure of some of the associates, judges, politicians, business people who are aiding and abetting drug trafficking with the Akasha brothers. So, my sister Rosa,
My brother Khalwale,
you have the highest platform in the country. When you open parliament, and I believe it is this week, next week,
Tuesday,
stand in your place. Demand that a disclosure be made by the state whether some politicians are named by the Akasha brothers in their case. And if there are, what are their names? So that you clear Joho, for example, if you are worried that his name is being messed up. The fresh evidence by the Akasha brothers is the one which is actually making people uncomfortable.
I don't think when you hear Governor Sang talking, it's because of those fresh evidence that you're talking about.
Okay.
It is clearly political, and in that clip that we've just seen, he's actually holding brief for Ruto and retaliating.
Are you sure?
Oh, no. It's like something, Joho had said something about Ruto when he was on his tour in Busia. And so what he's doing is he's retaliating and saying, don't even get into this, and therefore bringing the issue up. So I think, like we've all said, let this not be politicized.
Okay.
We have an investigative arm, and if you think that you have evidence, go right ahead and produce that evidence and let the official investigative arm bring this matter to book. Because like you say, it is important and Kenyans are suffering. But peddling it around and going to all conferences and sounding like you're accusing and causing propaganda is just belittling a problem that is really affecting many Kenyans. So produce evidence or go and produce evidence with the DCI, let them actually take the investigations to its conclusive end.
Okay. I don't want to add so much to it because you know, it's my conviction that really it doesn't merit our airtime really to dwell on such a major distortion of destiny, for that matter, or of course where we should be going. And I say that because remember, our country had been marked and actually named in a global report as one of the major routes and destination for drugs worldwide. And remember when the president was in Mombasa sometimes and destroying a whole ship, you know, full of drugs, and that speaks to the immensity of the challenge that this country is facing. I come from a county that you know, Kiambu, because of its proximity to Nairobi, that has so many cases of young people who have lost their livelihoods because of drug abuse. And so you know when I see such a matter that is so dear to families and that have made you know, fathers cry and mothers weep for loss of their sons. When I see then you know, politicians you know, playing who is better than who in propaganda you know, about it doesn't sound right. Actually, it gives politics a bad name. We should be able to look at issues that we can play politics with and decide which ones are those and do our politics if we have to. But then on issues, because it will not matter whether it is a son of an ODM legislator or a Jubilee legislator. Once they get hooked, they will lose their destiny. And you could be speaking the way you are speaking, and then the next time your own grandson is going to be in a rehab for life, losing their you know, their destiny. So I say, let's stop this thing and ask our politicians to be responsible. If we have to challenge each other for political reasons, then let's do that from a political perspective and for political using a political angle.
Well summarized.